How many nights have you spent worrying about things you cannot control? How many times have you stared at your circumstances, wondering if life will ever change? The human mind becomes restless when answers do not appear immediately. It fears silence. It fears delay. It fears uncertainty. And in those moments, worry begins to take control. But what if the silence is not emptiness? What if behind the scenes, reality is already shifting in ways you cannot yet see? What if the closed doors, the delays, and the confusion are not signs of failure, but signs that life is rearranging itself for something greater? Most people give up too soon because they mistake stillness for stagnation. They believe nothing is happening simply because they cannot see movement with their physical eyes. But the greatest changes in life often begin invisibly. Long before the breakthrough arrives, unseen forces are already aligning circumstances, people, and opportunities. Tonight, you are about to understand why worry weakens your power, why trust changes everything, and why your reality may already be transforming behind the scenes at this very moment. So quiet your mind, release your fear, and listen carefully, because the universe may already be rearranging everything in your favor. One of the greatest struggles people face is learning how to remain faithful during seasons of silence. Human beings naturally want visible proof that things are moving forward. They want immediate confirmation that their prayers are being answered, their desires are manifesting, and their efforts are producing results. But life does not always reveal its movement instantly. In fact, some of the most important transformations happen invisibly long before they appear physically. The mind often mistakes delay for failure. When circumstances remain unchanged for too long, doubt begins creeping in. People start questioning themselves, questioning their future, and questioning whether what they desire will ever arrive. They assume that because they cannot yet see movement, nothing is happening at all. But this assumption is one of the greatest illusions the fearful mind creates. Life is constantly unfolding beneath the surface. There are invisible processes taking place every moment that human eyes cannot fully perceive. Opportunities are forming, connections are aligning, circumstances are shifting quietly in ways you may not yet understand. What appears still externally may actually be full of hidden movement internally. Nature itself demonstrates this truth perfectly. A seed planted underground seems invisible for a time. From the surface, the soil appears unchanged. Yet beneath the ground, roots are spreading, growth is beginning, and preparation for future expression is already underway. If someone judged the process only by outward appearances, they might wrongly conclude that nothing was happening. But the unseen activity beneath the surface is precisely what makes the visible bloom possible later. Human life operates in much the same way. Before visible breakthroughs occur, invisible preparation often takes place first. Sometimes life must rearrange circumstances, remove old patterns, shift relationships, or guide you toward new paths before your desired reality fully appears. What you call delay may actually be preparation. The problem is that most people react emotionally to appearances too quickly. The moment they encounter silence, they panic. The moment results do not appear immediately, they begin affirming failure inwardly. Instead of trusting the process, they feed fear through constant worry and impatience. And because the outer world reflects dominant inner states, this emotional instability often prolongs the very experience they wish to escape. Worry is not neutral. Worry keeps the mind focused on absence. It strengthens the feeling that something is missing or going wrong. The more a person obsesses over delays, the more emotionally attached they become to the idea that fulfillment is distant. In this way, fear recreates more waiting. But the person who understands the unseen nature of creation behaves differently. They stop needing constant proof. They stop demanding immediate evidence for every desire. Instead, they develop inner trust. They recognize that reality is not limited to what can currently be seen. Think about how often life has surprised people unexpectedly. Opportunities appear suddenly. Answers arrive at unexpected moments. Chance meetings completely change someone's future. Doors open after long periods of silence. Many times, what seemed impossible one day becomes reality the next. Yet, behind every sudden breakthrough were invisible processes already unfolding beforehand. The human mind only notices the final visible moment, but life was moving long before that moment appeared. This is why patience is not passive weakness. Patience is emotional stability during unseen movement. It is the ability to remain inwardly calm while life quietly rearranges itself behind the scenes. There are seasons when nothing outwardly seems different, yet internally you are changing. Your beliefs are shifting. Your awareness is expanding. Your emotional state is transforming. And these internal changes eventually influence the external conditions of your life. The outer world always follows the inner state, though not always immediately. This is why it is dangerous to give up too soon. Many people abandon their vision moments before circumstances begin changing. They become discouraged because they cannot yet see what is already forming invisibly. But reality often moves silently before it moves visibly. So stop assuming delay means denial. Stop believing silence means abandonment. Life may be preparing something greater than you currently understand. The unseen world is always active, always shifting, always responding to your dominant assumptions and feelings. Even now, while you are questioning whether anything is changing, movement may already be taking place beneath the surface of your reality. The opportunity may already be approaching. The answer may already be forming. The path may already be opening in ways you cannot yet recognize. Trust the unseen process. Remain faithful to the vision within you, because what feels delayed today may actually be quietly unfolding perfectly behind the scenes. Worry is one of the most destructive habits of the human mind because it quietly steals peace, weakens faith, and keeps people emotionally trapped in fear. Most people worry because they believe it gives them control over uncertain situations. They think constant overthinking somehow protects them from disappointment or prepares them for the future. But worry does not create solutions. It creates resistance. It keeps the mind focused on problems instead of possibilities, and over time, it shapes the very reality a person wishes to avoid. The mind cannot experience peace and worry at the same time. One state always dominates the other. When worry becomes constant, the body remains tense, the emotions become unstable, and the imagination begins producing fearful outcomes repeatedly. A worried person lives mentally in future problems that may never even happen. They rehearse failure before failure exists. They imagine rejection before rejection occurs. And because the subconscious mind responds to repeated emotional impressions, those fears slowly influence their outer experiences. Most people do not realize how powerful their inner state truly is. They believe manifestation is only about repeating positive words or briefly visualizing what they want. But manifestation is deeply connected to the emotional atmosphere you consistently live within. If your dominant emotional state is fear, anxiety, desperation, and doubt, then you continue broadcasting the feeling that something is wrong or missing. And life mirrors that state back to you. This is why peace is essential. Peace signals trust. Peace tells the subconscious mind that you no longer feel separated from what you desire. A peaceful person is not emotionally chasing their future because inwardly they already believe things are unfolding in their favor. That calm certainty allows life to move naturally without constant resistance from fear. Worry, on the other hand, interrupts this flow. Imagine trying to plant a seed while digging it up every single day to check whether it is growing. No seed can develop properly under constant disturbance. In the same way, when you repeatedly plant intentions through visualization, prayer, or assumption but then destroy them with endless fear and doubt, you create inner conflict. The subconscious mind receives mixed signals. One moment you affirm trust, and the next moment you affirm panic. This emotional inconsistency keeps people trapped. They say they desire abundance while constantly fearing lack. They say they desire love while constantly expecting rejection. They say they trust life while constantly worrying about failure. The dominant emotional state always becomes more powerful than occasional positive thinking. A person who truly trusts does not need endless reassurance. Think about how naturally calm you feel regarding things you already believe are secure. You do not spend every minute worrying whether the sun will rise tomorrow. You trust the process of life automatically. In the same way, manifestation flows more naturally when you stop treating your desires like impossible miracles and begin accepting them inwardly as realities already unfolding. This does not mean you will never experience moments of fear. Human emotions naturally rise and fall. But there is a difference between briefly feeling fear and living permanently inside it. The important thing is learning how to return yourself to peace instead of feeding fear continuously through attention. Attention is powerful. Whatever you repeatedly focus on emotionally begins growing stronger within your consciousness. If you constantly feed worry through endless mental repetition, fear becomes familiar. And what becomes familiar eventually shapes perception, behavior, and experience. But if you begin feeding peace instead, your inner world gradually stabilizes. Peace changes the way you move through life. Decisions become clearer because fear no longer clouds your thinking. Your energy becomes lighter because you are no longer emotionally exhausted by overthinking. Opportunities become easier to recognize because the mind is no longer consumed by panic. And most importantly, you stop reacting desperately to temporary appearances. Many manifestations arrive naturally the moment people stop forcing them through fear. The moment they release obsession, the moment they surrender emotional struggle, circumstances begin shifting unexpectedly. This happens because resistance weakens when peace returns. Life responds powerfully to emotional alignment. A calm mind and trusting heart create space for new experiences to enter. But worry fills that space with tension and fear. This is why letting go is not about giving up your desire. It is about releasing the fearful attachment that blocks natural unfolding. So stop believing worry protects you. Worry has never created peace, abundance, love, or fulfillment. It only strengthens emotional exhaustion. Instead, return to trust, return to stillness, return to the quiet confidence that life is already responding even if you cannot yet see the full picture. Because manifestation flows most naturally when the mind becomes peaceful enough to stop resisting what is already trying to arrive. Most people spend their lives trying to change external circumstances without ever changing themselves internally. They focus entirely on what they can see: money, relationships, opportunities, appearances, and conditions, while ignoring the deeper force that shapes all of those things, their inner state. They believe that once the outer world improves, then they will finally feel peace, confidence, happiness, or security. But life rarely works in that order. The outer world begins shifting only after the inner state becomes stable and certain. Everything you experience externally is connected to the assumptions, emotions, and beliefs you repeatedly carry within yourself. Your dominant inner state silently influences the way you think, act, react, perceive, and move through life. Over time, reality mirrors these internal patterns back to you. This is why two people can face similar circumstances yet experience completely different outcomes. Their outer experiences are shaped not only by external events, but by the consciousness through which they interpret and respond to life. Most people unknowingly live in unstable inner states. One day they feel hopeful, the next day fearful. One moment they believe their desires are possible, the next moment they convince themselves everything will fail. They react emotionally to every temporary appearance in the outer world. If something good happens, they feel secure. If something negative happens, they lose all faith immediately. Their emotional state constantly shifts according to circumstances. But circumstances themselves are often reflections of previous inner states. This means that if you allow appearances to control your emotions, you remain trapped inside the same cycle. You continue reacting to old manifestations while unconsciously recreating them through the same emotional patterns. The person who truly transforms their life learns something powerful: stability must come from within first. They stop waiting for the world to give them permission to feel secure, loved, abundant, or worthy. Instead, they begin cultivating those feelings internally before visible proof appears. This inner stability changes everything. A person who becomes inwardly certain no longer reacts to temporary setbacks with panic. They stop assuming every delay means failure. They stop looking for constant reassurance from the outside world. Instead, they remain rooted in the feeling that life is still unfolding in their favor, regardless of present appearances. Certainty is not loud or dramatic, it is quiet confidence. It is the calm inner knowing that what you have accepted inwardly must eventually reflect outwardly. A certain person does not constantly chase signs because they no longer feel separated from the reality they desire. Think about how differently you behave when you truly believe something is already secure. When you know a result is guaranteed, you move through life more peacefully. Fear weakens because trust becomes stronger. In the same way, when you become emotionally stable in the assumption that your desires are already unfolding, reality gradually begins reshaping itself around that state. The outer world cannot permanently contradict your dominant consciousness forever. Temporary delays may appear, but sustained inner transformation eventually produces external change. This is because consciousness influences perception, behavior, emotional energy, and the opportunities you notice or attract. A fearful person often unconsciously creates fearful experiences because they expect them. A confident person notices possibilities because their mind is trained toward expectation instead of limitation. Inner states influence everything from body language to decision making to relationships with others. Life continuously responds to the energy and assumptions you consistently embody. This is why emotional discipline matters. If you constantly allow fear, doubt, and appearances to control you, your inner state remains unstable. But when you deliberately return yourself to certainty again and again, something powerful happens. The new state gradually becomes natural. At first, maintaining certainty may feel difficult because the mind is conditioned by past experiences. Old fears will attempt to return. Old patterns will try to pull you back into worry. But persistence changes identity over time. The more often you return to the feeling of trust and fulfillment, the more stable that state becomes within you. And once the inner state stabilizes, the outer world begins reflecting it in unexpected ways. Opportunities appear, relationships improve, new ideas emerge, circumstances shift. Life begins reorganizing itself around the new consciousness you have accepted within yourself. This is why true transformation always begins internally. The world outside is not the cause of your inner state, it is often the reflection of it. When you finally stop depending on external conditions to feel secure and instead cultivate certainty within, you activate a different experience of life entirely. The outer world changes after the inner state changes first. And when certainty becomes stronger than fear, reality can no longer remain the same. One of the greatest challenges in human experience is learning to trust what cannot yet be seen. The human mind is naturally conditioned to rely on visible evidence. It believes what it can touch, measure, and confirm through the senses. Because of this conditioning, people often fall into the trap of reacting only to appearances. If circumstances look good, they feel hopeful. If circumstances look bad, they feel discouraged. If nothing appears to be happening, they assume nothing is happening at all. But appearances are not the full truth of reality. In fact, appearances are often the last stage of a process that began long before anything became visible. There is always an unseen movement behind every visible outcome. Life is constantly operating beneath the surface in ways the physical mind cannot fully detect. Opportunities are forming, circumstances are shifting, and paths are aligning even when everything appears still. The mistake most people make is judging life based only on what is currently visible. They react emotionally to temporary conditions and forget that conditions are always changing. When a person reacts to appearances, they become emotionally unstable. Their mood rises and falls based on external events. If something positive happens, they feel temporarily secure. If something negative appears, they lose faith immediately. This constant emotional reaction keeps them trapped in instability because their inner world is always dependent on outer conditions. But outer conditions are not fixed. They are reflections of deeper inner movements that take time to fully express. Trusting the unseen means learning to remain steady even when there is no visible proof. It means choosing inner certainty over outer confusion. It means understanding that just because something is not visible does not mean it is not real. In fact, many of the most important transformations in life begin invisibly long before they become physically obvious. Think about how nature operates. A seed planted in the ground does not immediately grow into a tree. For a period of time, there is nothing visible above the soil. Yet beneath the surface, growth is actively taking place. Roots are forming, structure is developing, and preparation is happening for future expression. If someone judged the seed only by what they could see, they might assume nothing is happening. But the unseen process is exactly what guarantees the visible outcome later. Human life follows the same principle. Every desire, intention, and assumption begins invisibly within consciousness before it takes form externally. The delay between inner formation and outer appearance often confuses people. They expect immediate results, and when results do not appear quickly, they assume failure. But timing is not absence of movement. Timing is simply the unfolding of invisible processes into visible form. Reacting to appearances creates unnecessary suffering. It makes people emotionally unstable and causes them to abandon their vision prematurely. One moment they believe in their future, and the next moment they lose faith because something external did not go as expected. This constant reaction weakens inner stability and delays the natural unfolding of their desires. On the other hand, trusting the unseen creates inner peace. It allows a person to remain calm even when external circumstances appear uncertain. This calmness is not ignorance, it is understanding. It is the awareness that reality is always in motion, even when motion cannot yet be perceived. When you stop reacting to every external fluctuation, your energy becomes steady, your thoughts become clearer, and your emotional state becomes more aligned. Life often works in layers. What is visible is only the final layer of a much deeper process. Beneath what you see, there are countless adjustments happening simultaneously. People are making decisions. Situations are shifting direction. Opportunities are moving into alignment. What appears delayed may actually be actively forming in ways beyond your awareness. Trust is what allows you to stay aligned during this invisible phase. Trust does not mean ignoring reality. It means refusing to be controlled by temporary appearances. It is the inner decision to remain steady even when there is no external confirmation yet. This stability itself becomes powerful because it prevents emotional disruption from interfering with the natural process of unfolding. When you trust the unseen, you stop forcing outcomes. You stop panicking over delays. You stop assuming the worst based on incomplete information. Instead, you allow life to unfold in its own intelligent timing. And often, when the result finally appears, it feels sudden, only because the unseen work was always happening quietly in the background. So do not let appearances dictate your emotional state. Do not mistake silence for absence. Do not confuse delay with denial. What is forming beneath the surface is often far greater than what you can currently perceive. And when the unseen finally becomes visible, you will realize that life was working all along in ways you could not yet understand. One of the biggest reasons people remain stuck in cycles of worry, doubt, and emotional instability is because they give too much authority to temporary appearances. What they see in the moment becomes their entire truth. If circumstances look good, they feel hopeful and secure. If circumstances look bad, they feel defeated and discouraged. If nothing seems to be changing, they assume nothing will ever change. This constant emotional reaction to appearances keeps people trapped in a surface level understanding of life, where every situation feels final, even though nothing in life is ever truly fixed. The truth is that appearances are only snapshots of a much larger process. They represent the surface expression of deeper movements that have already been set in motion long before they become visible. What you see today is often the result of past inner states, past assumptions, and past emotional patterns. But because people forget this, they react to the present moment as if it is permanent, instead of recognizing it as temporary. When a person reacts to appearances, they surrender their emotional power to external conditions. Their mood, their confidence, and their sense of peace all depend on what is happening outside of them. This creates instability because the external world is constantly shifting. Nothing in physical reality remains fixed forever. Circumstances change, people change, situations evolve, and unexpected events always occur. So when your emotional state is built on appearances, your inner world becomes equally unstable. But there is another way to live. A way where your inner state remains steady regardless of what is currently visible. This begins with the understanding that appearances are not final judgments. They are temporary expressions of ongoing processes. They are like scenes in a movie, not the entire story. Think about how often life has already proven this truth. There were moments when something looked completely hopeless, yet later it resolved in ways you could not have predicted. There were situations that seemed like failures at the time, but eventually became turning points that led to better outcomes. There were delays that felt frustrating, but later revealed themselves as necessary redirections. If you reflect honestly, you will realize that appearances have often been misleading. The human mind struggles with patience because it wants immediate closure. It wants to label situations quickly as good or bad, success or failure, progress or setback. But life does not operate in such final terms. What appears as a setback today may be a setup for something better tomorrow. What seems like rejection may be protection or redirection. What feels like delay may actually be preparation unfolding behind the scenes. When you constantly react to appearances, you interrupt your own emotional stability. You begin to assume conclusions before the full process has unfolded. This creates unnecessary stress and leads to premature decisions, such as giving up too early or abandoning something that was actually developing in your favor. But when you learn to observe appearances without reacting emotionally, something powerful happens. You begin to detach your peace from temporary conditions. You stop letting external events dictate your inner world. Instead of reacting instantly to what you see, you begin responding from a deeper sense of trust and understanding. This does not mean ignoring reality. It means recognizing that reality is not static. It is always in motion. What you see at any given moment is only a small fragment of a much larger unfolding process. And because it is incomplete, it cannot be trusted as the final truth. A calm mind understands this. It does not panic when things look uncertain. It does not become overly excited when things look good. It remains steady because it knows that appearances are temporary and subject to change. This stability allows life to unfold more naturally because there is less emotional interference from fear and doubt. Many breakthroughs in life happen precisely after people stop reacting to what they see. The moment they release emotional resistance, things begin shifting unexpectedly. This is because inner alignment is no longer disrupted by constant fear-based reactions. So the key is simple but powerful: stop treating appearances as final reality. Stop building your emotional state on what is currently visible. Stop assuming that what you see today defines your future. Instead, understand that life is always moving beyond what your eyes can and currently perceive. And when you stop reacting to temporary appearances, you begin to access a deeper level of peace, clarity, and trust. A state where life can unfold without resistance, and where reality finally has space to transform naturally. There is an invisible order operating behind everything you experience in life. Most people believe their circumstances are random, unpredictable, or controlled entirely by external forces, but there is a deeper pattern at work that constantly reflects the inner assumptions you consistently hold. Your dominant thoughts, emotional patterns, and inner beliefs are not passive. They are active forces that shape how your life unfolds. Over time, life reorganizes itself to match the state you most frequently occupy within your consciousness. People often misunderstand this process because they focus only on surface level events. They look at their current situation and assume it is fixed, forgetting that what they are experiencing is the result of previous mental and emotional states. Every condition in your life began as an assumption, something you repeatedly accepted, felt, or believed to be true. And because those assumptions were sustained long enough, they eventually expressed themselves as your present reality. This is why two people can experience completely different outcomes even when facing similar circumstances. One person may see opportunity where another sees limitation. One may experience growth while the other experiences stagnation. The difference is not always in the external world, but in the dominant internal assumptions they carry. Life is always responding to the strongest inner state, not occasional thoughts or fleeting emotions. When a person consistently assumes lack, struggle, or failure, life begins to reflect those assumptions back through matching experiences, not as punishment, but as alignment. The outer world simply organizes itself around the patterns repeatedly impressed within consciousness. On the other hand, when a person begins to assume abundance, stability, and success, even before physical evidence appears, life slowly begins to reorganize itself to reflect that new inner direction. This process is not immediate, which is why many people miss it. They change their thoughts for a short time and expect instant transformation, but deep assumptions take time to shift. The mind is layered with habits built over years of repetition. So even when someone begins adopting new beliefs, the outer world may still reflect older assumptions for a while. This delay often confuses people into believing nothing is changing, but beneath the surface, reorganization is already taking place. Life is constantly adjusting itself to match your inner world. Opportunities that align with your assumptions begin moving closer. Situations that do not match your new direction naturally fall away. People either align with your new state or drift away from it. Circumstances shift in subtle ways that may not be immediately noticeable, but over time, these shifts accumulate into visible transformation. The key factor in this process is consistency. Occasional positive thinking does not reshape reality. What reshapes reality is the dominant state you return to repeatedly. If fear is your dominant state, fear becomes your experience. If trust is your dominant state, trust becomes your experience. Life does not respond to your hopes alone. It responds to what you consistently assume to be true about yourself and your world. This is why inner awareness is so important. Many people unknowingly reinforce old assumptions every day through their reactions, conversations, and emotional responses. They say they want change, but they continue living mentally from the identity of their current limitations. They keep revisiting the same fears, the same doubts, and the same mental stories that maintain their existing reality. But the moment you begin consciously shifting your dominant assumptions, life begins reorganizing itself around that change. At first, it may feel subtle. You might notice small improvements in your thinking, your emotional stability, or the way you respond to situations. Then gradually, external circumstances begin shifting in alignment with your new inner direction. This reorganization is not random. It is precise and intelligent. Life adjusts itself in response to the state you occupy most consistently. That is why sudden changes in mindset often lead to unexpected shifts in external reality. When your inner state stabilizes in a new assumption, the outer world eventually has no choice but to reflect it. However, this process requires patience. You cannot expect immediate transformation after years of repeated old thinking patterns. But you can trust that every time you return to a new assumption, even after doubt appears, you are reinforcing a new direction. Every return to trust strengthens alignment. Every return to certainty weakens old patterns. Eventually, the accumulation of new assumptions becomes dominant. And when that happens, life begins to reorganize itself in more noticeable ways. Doors open that were previously closed. Opportunities appear where there was once limitation. Situations that once felt fixed begin to shift naturally. So instead of reacting to current circumstances as if they are permanent, recognize them as reflections of past assumptions. And instead of being discouraged by what you see today, understand that your present awareness has the power to reshape what comes next. Because life is always reorganizing itself, not randomly, but in perfect alignment with the dominant assumptions you continue to hold within. The truth is, life has always been moving in ways beyond your understanding. Even during your moments of fear, confusion, and uncertainty, unseen forces were still at work. The problem was never that life stopped responding. The problem was that worry made you believe nothing was happening. But now you understand something deeper. You understand that appearances are temporary. You understand that silence does not mean failure. You understand that what is invisible today can become undeniable tomorrow. So stop fighting every delay. Stop fearing every obstacle. Stop assuming that because you cannot see movement, movement does not exist. The unseen world is always active. Circumstances are always shifting. Paths are always forming. Life is constantly responding to the state you hold within yourself. Choose trust over fear. Choose peace over panic. Choose faith over endless worry. Because when your inner world becomes calm and certain, the outer world begins reflecting that certainty back to you. And one day, You will look back and realize that even in your darkest moments, everything was being arranged perfectly. The opportunities, the timing, the people, the breakthroughs. All of it was unfolding behind the scenes while you thought nothing was happening. So breathe deeply. Relax your mind. Let go of the need to control every detail. Trust the unseen movement of life, because the universe is rearranging everything, even now. Thank you for being here and sharing this moment together. If this message brought you peace, clarity, or encouragement, carry that feeling with you throughout your day and remember that your inner state shapes the reality you experience. And if this message inspired you, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss future teachings designed to strengthen your mind, deepen your faith, and transform your life. Share this message with someone who may be struggling with worry right now, because sometimes a single reminder can completely change a person's direction. Until next time, stay calm, stay faithful, and never forget, even when you cannot see it, life is still moving in your favor.